Hello, my name's Lisa and I'd like to welcome you back to my channel. Today's video we're going to be talking about a tattoo that cost an awful lot of money and it went seriously wrong. And this has got to be every tattoo client's worst nightmare. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Normally, I would put up videos to comment to, but this is part of a Twitter thread. So we're just going to be reading what the lady has to say. So her name is Maddie, and this is what she says. I think enough time has passed, and I'm ready to talk about my jank ass tattoo. Since the guy who did it is ghosting me, and I'm upset. Well, when you see what this tattoo is like, you're going to really understand why she's upset. So here's how my sick leg tattoo would have killed me. A thread. Well, looking at the pictures that are accompanying what she's written, you can really understand why she feels the way she does. Anyway, let's continue on with what Dani has to say. So, my beloved artist that's done 90% of my other tattoos has moved away. That's sad when that happens because you get to trust your tattoo artist and then they leave. And then it can be really difficult finding someone else that you trust. So it felt like fate that I met a new tattoo artist at work one day, just as I was looking to get this piece. He worked out of a private studio, in brackets, aka a room in an old building downtown. So I was nervous. Well, I can't blame you there, Maddie. I would have been nervous as well. And to be honest, the fact it was going to be completed in an old room downtown would definitely have put me off, I think. But maybe I would have given him the benefit of the doubt, like you did, and at least gone along to see what the setup was. But he told me countless times that he'd been doing this a long time and in multiple cities. The multiple cities bit might have been a bit of a red flag to me as well, because I think I would be asking myself, why has he moved around multiple cities? But then I suppose that comes with age, doesn't it? And I'm not in my 20s or 30s, I'm in my 50s. So, I don't know how I would have thought about it if I was those ages. Maybe I wouldn't think the way I do now. I trusted him. Needless to say, I trusted him too much. Well, that's easy to say in hindsight, isn't it? My old artist would make me sign a waiver and spend a good 10 minutes cleaning and prepping, etc. While this guy did none of that. Well, yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? When you go to a tattoo studio, the studio is actually liable, so they do get you to sign a waiver, which in some respects can be a good thing, but not always, because the waiver generally says you can leave the tattoo studio and not necessarily be happy with the piece, but you've got no recompense on that. So that's not always a good thing. It really depends what the waiver says. And yeah, every time I've had a tattoo, they do clean and prep. And that is something that is extremely important. I think that would have been a real big red flag there for me. He made me stand on the tattoo bed with dirty shoes. Wow, what's that telling you? You should never, ever, ever stand on a tattoo bed with shoes on. While he hand drew the tattoo with a Sharpie pen. To be honest, I've never had a hand-drawn tattoo. I've always had a tracing, so I've got a good idea of whether I like it or not before it gets tattooed. So I don't know really what to say about drawing it with a Sharpie pen. Sounds a bit suspect to me. He didn't wrap any of his equipment and used tap water to dilute the ink. Well, wrapping the equipment is extremely important because of cross contamination. You've got no idea who he tattooed before you and whether they've got any medical conditions. So, you would expect to go to a tattooist and for them to put new needles in and to wrap all of the equipment for safety's sake and diluting the ink with tap water. Can't say I've ever seen that happen either. So that's another huge red flag to me. He used his phone without changing his gloves and left me for 30 minutes mid session to get food and was coughing, etc. Every time I've had a tattoo done, any time the tattooist had stopped actually working on the tattoo and did anything else, they always took their gloves off. And then when they started to do the tattoo again, they put clean gloves on. And to be honest, that's part of the cost, is the fact that you're going to literally need to keep changing gloves. So that seems like a disaster waiting to happen for me. I hope he changed his gloves after he ate food. I mean, you don't say, but from what you're not saying, I would have to say he probably didn't. And if he was coughing, then he should have been changing gloves, every time he coughed. Half of these things I didn't even realise were wrong until talking to doctors and other artists afterwards. I'm probably going to say something controversial here, but obviously this is just my opinion. But if you've had tattoos before, then surely that must have said that there was something wrong about this to you, because that's not how any of the other tattoo artists would have behaved. I was just telling myself that he was experienced and hey, people tattoo themselves at home, so this is probably fine. I was wrong. So wrong. It's true, people do tattoo themselves at home, but all you see is the actual process of them tattooing themselves. You don't see necessarily all of the preparation that they've done before they start tattooing themselves in a video. So I can sort of understand there why you would think that that would be okay. But obviously, it turns out not to be okay. The next day, I couldn't even walk. The swelling was so bad that I took off the wrap and washed it, but it looked bad. Then the worst muscle spasm started. I got a fever, was throwing up, and still couldn't put any weight on my leg. I texted the artist and sent him these photos. Obviously, when you have a tattoo, it doesn't make you throw up. It doesn't swell up extensively unless it is seriously infected. And as we can see from these pictures, that's what's happening. On the calf there, you can see how red and how far away that redness is from the tattoo. And that is just not normal. I remember when I had an infection in my big toe and it was so painful and it throbbed like mad. And it took a few days to go away and I couldn't sleep. So I dread to think how really bad Maddie was, because what she's saying here is putting it mildly, in my opinion. Looking at the tattoo as a whole, to be fair, it doesn't even look that good, does it? It's shiny because obviously it's a new tattoo, but the line work doesn't look that brilliant to me, and I'm not a tattooist. Even without the infection, I can't say I would be too impressed with this tattoo. But just look at the bottom of her leg near her calf. That is extremely swollen. Despite me saying I was throwing up, he told me it wasn't bad and just to let it do its thing naturally. So I did until I woke up the next morning and had no choice but to call urgent care. I got put on 2 antibiotics and they said it was definitely infected. I can't believe when you contacted him and told him that you were throwing up, he said just let it do its own thing. Seriously? That's not owning up to anything, is it? That's disgusting. Looking at this picture, we can see just how bad that infection is. It's certainly tracking a long way from the last point of the tattoo, and that must have been excruciatingly painful. Looking at this picture, the bit just above the knee is actually bleeding, and that's definitely not a good sign. I gave the tattoo artist an update, but he said it was probably a reaction to the second skin. I've never had a reaction to the second skin, but I can tell you I have seen pictures of people that have, and to be honest, the pictures don't look anything like the images we are seeing here of Maddie. The second skin doesn't cause pus to be coming out of the tattoo like it is in this first image. That's for sure. The doctors said it was infected, and it was so infected that 2 days later I ended up in the ER as the infection was getting worse despite the antibiotics. Let's face it, antibiotics are there predominantly to fight infection. So if you're on 2 different types and you end up in an emergency room, that is suggesting that this is a majorly serious infection. And the problem is with tattoo infections is ultimately they can lead to death. Obviously, that is not something that happens very often, but that doesn't change the fact it is a possibility. And that is a scary, scary thought. In this picture, we can see a close up of the bottom of the tattoo and we can see the pus and gunk coming out of it. I was then put on 4 antibiotics in total. Luckily, it didn't get fully septic, but if I had followed his advice, it most definitely would have. The healing process from here on left a 2 millimeter hole in my shin and was the most excruciating and horrifying experience. Looking at that picture, we can see exactly what Maddie is saying there. Now you know what a seriously infected tattoo looks like, and it's not a pretty sight, is it? No, she probably doesn't feel lucky, but she was extremely lucky that she didn't take the tattoo artist's advice and she did go to the emergency room. Otherwise, that could have been 100 times worse. Look at all the crap that's coming out of it on that second image. Believe how that is looking. No, after paying all that money, she doesn't feel lucky, but she certainly is. 1 month later, and while I should be happy that the tattoo is almost healed, I'm so embarrassed. Well, I can understand that, Maddie, but at the end of the day, you've got no reason to be embarrassed. It's not you that messed up. The tattoo as a whole looks like absolute shit, not just because of the infection, but simply because he did a terrible job. It's full of blowouts and the shading is terrible, etc. Yeah, We can see exactly what she's saying in these images, can't we? It's definitely not the best tattoo I've ever seen in my life. But to be fair, it's not the worst either. Definitely the worst infected I've ever seen. With tip, I paid $1,250 for this. I also missed days of work, had to pay for antibiotics. Don't know if I'll ever want another tattoo. With $1,800 in losses as a broke student, I reached out asking for a partial refund back from the tattoo. It's been 20 years since I had a large tattoo done, so obviously the prices have changed dramatically in that time. But I wouldn't know if $1,250 is a good price for a tattoo of that size. Maybe you can let me know down in the comments. But one thing's for sure, the amount of money that Maddie spent and the amount of hassle and pain that she went through, there's no way on this earth that was worth what she paid. I laid all of this out, his negligence, and how ultimately I just hate the tattoo. I'm mortified. He responded to one email saying he'll offer me free touch ups as compensation. Seriously? He expects you to go back and get touch ups when he's messed up like that? Is he delusional? As if I'd ever trust him again. Yeah, damn right, Maddie. There's no way I would ever trust him again. And I told him that simply ain't enough. From there on, radio silence. It wouldn't be enough for me, Maddie, either. And to then ghost you is just admitting his guilt, isn't it? What I learned, go to a tattoo shop where they have strict sanitation policies, other artists there to keep them in check. Make sure you read and sign a waiver so you're aware of all of the risks of a tattoo. Hopefully, one day I can financially and mentally afford to fix this. Well, I'm really hoping that one day you're in that position as well, Maddie. But I would quite imagine that after all of the videos and all of the tweets that you've received on Twitter, I would quite imagine there are a lot of tattoo artists out there who would be more than happy to fix this for you, which is really good to know, isn't it? A lot of people said to Maddie that she should name and shame him, and to be honest, that is something that she refused to do. All she said is that he works out of Canada. But there is an edit on this post. I won't post his name yet because he's fairly well known in Vancouver, has thousands of followers, hence her trust, and because I am looking into legal options, just being careful. But if you live in Van and want to know, please DM me. Thanks for all the kindness, offers to fix, and donations. I love you. Got to say, that has got to be the worst infected tattoo I have ever seen. I've never known anyone have to be on 4 different types of antibiotics to bring it under control. And that just goes to show how serious the infection was and just how lucky Maddie is to still be around. Well, that's it for today's video. I hope it has been educational for you. If you've enjoyed it, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you on the next video. Ta-ta for now.